Hi, welcome to our webinar for today. We're going to give you guys maybe like 30 seconds to a minute to get everyone
Mhm.
situated and let other people come in.
Yep.
But yes, happy to have you here. Hope you guys get yourselves comfortable.
Yeah.
Maybe have a drink, have a nice seat so that we can enjoy this hour together about a
Yep.
really interesting topic, which is overcoming sugar cravings and emotional eating.
Mm.
Okay, so
Yep.
before we get started, just want to go through a little bit of housekeeping just for everyone's ease because this is a webinar. So
Mm.
I want to encourage all of you to use a supported browser. And if any case that you do have any sort of difficulties, we recommend for you to leave the webinar first and then rejoin the webinar again. Try that out. And if that still doesn't work, if you still can't hear us or if you can't see us or there's some difficulty, please add Naluri events in the chat. We have our team in the back end to support you throughout this webinar. So if you have any sort of technical difficulties, feel free to reach out to them through the chat
Yep.
in itself. Okay. Just checking. Hi, good morning, everyone. Happy to see
Wow.
everyone's chats. Salam and good morning. Yay,
Yeah. Morning,
exciting.
everybody. I'm
Yes.
I'm really surprised how many people we have online joining us.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to see everybody here today.
Yes. That's really exciting. And it's going to be a really
Yeah.
fun time. Okay.
Yep.
One last thing before we
Mm.
proceed, I wanted to, so regarding housekeeping. So if you have any issues, try to leave the webinar, rejoin again and then see if it works. If it doesn't, add in your chat, add another events, and we have a team to support you with regards whatever difficulty that you're facing.
Yep.
And then we want to encourage all of you guys to ask us questions, to give feedback, to give thoughts, to give your opinions, your
Yep.
any sort of your experiences or sharing that you're willing to share.
Yeah.
Yeah, throughout the webinar. So we want to make this as
Exactly.
interactive as possible. Yeah, right. So that it's a
And we'll all
conversation.
learn together. Yeah, we'll all
Exactly right.
learn together. Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
very
So
important topic. I see this with a lot of my clients, Diana, and
yeah.
everyone. So I'm really glad that we're joined by a lot of people.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, make it as interactive. If you have any, it doesn't have to wait. We do have a Q&A portion at the end
Hmm.
to address all your questions as well. But again, if you have questions in between, yeah, feel free to share any sort of topics or anything that you resonate with or that you feel like, oh, I'm curious about that or I have this thought about this. Feel free to write it in the chat. We're happy to read them and maybe talk
Yeah.
about it as well. And you have also have the option to personal message us. So myself, Diana, and Indra, add Indra and add Diana. So
Mm.
that will be private if you feel uncomfortable to ask any sort of personal questions or sensitive questions that you don't want people to read. So you have that option as well. Okay, and feel free to stick till the end because you will be able to download the slides. And don't worry, the webinar itself will be emailed to you, the video itself.
Yeah.
So this is all recorded and you can rewatch this again in your own time afterwards. Okay, I
Okay.
hope I've answered everyone's questions. So, as a way to get started, let me introduce myself first. Hi, everyone. So, my name is Sharifah Diana. Thank you so much for being here today. Like, my name, you can call me Diana. So, I'm actually a Naluri mental health coach and also a clinical psychologist by practice. Um, and I've been practicing for about like 4 to 5 years now, essentially working a lot with like mental health issues like depression, burnt out, anxiety, any sort of
Mm.
like other mental health issues, relationship difficulties, marital difficulties, conflict, sexual difficulties, yeah, so much gender, what do you call it? Identity work, self improvement, and so forth. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me, but I want to invite my esteemed colleague here. Maybe she can introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you, Diana. Hi, everybody. I'm Indra Balaratnam, and I've been a dietitian for 29 years and counting now. Yes, I don't know where the time went by, but I technically run my own private practice here in Malaysia. In 2001, I started my own practice. So I'm the founder of Indra Balaratnam Nutrition. And in my practice, I see private clients one-on-one for individual personalized support and care. And then I also tend to do a lot of community educational talks and workshops. So those are usually done for the public or even in workplaces. And then I also consult food service providers. So yeah, food is my business. I'm passionate about food, about nutrition, because I truly believe that people need to nourish themselves. I'm also the fellow of the Malaysian Dietitians Association. So yeah, I'm really happy to join you all today for this session because it is a very important session. So it's something that it's important that we talk about. So yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for your introduction. And thank you, everyone. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. As a way to get started, maybe we can get right into it to talk about what the topic is about today. Like, what is actually sugar cravings and emotional eating from if you were to like explain that or share that to someone who has no idea what it is,
Yeah,
right? What's your
exactly.
point of view?
Correct. Now, why is it that emotional eating and sugar seem to go hand in hand? One of the reasons is when we're all constantly in stress and our emotions are rocked, right, due to stress. And stress can be very subtle. It doesn't need to be something very chaotic. It can be very subtle stress. It can be stress that we have been putting up with for a very long time but has kind of we've adapted to it, right? It's kind of become a norm for us. So we're constantly under that stress, and when our body is under that kind of stress, what happens is it produces cortisol. Now, cortisol is also commonly known as a stress hormone, and the thing about cortisol is it increases your appetite. It plays a big
Mm,
role in our appetite regulation, right? And
yeah.
when our appetite is increased, ironically, the food that we tend to want to go for are foods that are high in sugar and high in fat. Okay.
Mm,
Somehow a salad wouldn't look very appetizing to you at that time. Those kinds of foods, all the things that we know we should be eating doesn't look appetizing at the time. It's foods that are, high fat, high sugar. Those are the things that you will tend to crave. And
mm,
particularly if you're a person who already likes that sweet types of foods, right? You already have an affinity for those types of foods. All the more the craving can seem very overwhelming, right? So that's what you tend to go for. And just for your own curiosity, Malaysians on average consume about 30 grams of added sugar in their average day. Okay, this is just an average Malaysian. Now, 1 teaspoon is 4 grams of sugar. So if you were to convert 30 grams, that's roughly about what, 7.5 teaspoons of sugar. So, but the World Health Organization recommends that we consume no more than 6 teaspoons of added sugar per day. Now, for
okay.
those of you who are curious to know what is added sugar, right? Added sugar is sugar that we add to foods that don't naturally have that sweetness in it already. Like, for
Mm,
example, a cup of tea. Like a cup of tea, right, has no sugar, right, Diana? It's got
yep.
no sugar. You brew the tea. But when you put teaspoons of sugar to your tea, that's added sugar. Okay. You're
Mm,
making your tea sweet. So that's added sugar. All right. So that's what they recommend. So, I mean, in a nutshell, we're not here to get into the technical, how much sugar you're taking, but just know that on average, Malaysians are consuming way more sugar than what's recommended. Okay. And it's very
mm.
easy to fall in that trap when you have, emotions strong and your cortisol levels are going all crazy as well.
Yeah, true. So with
Mm,
that, you mentioned about the cortisol cycle, that I guess in
mm,
this case, a big part of it is about stress, right?
mm.
And maybe can you share about what happens when someone goes into uh yeah, well, what happens when someone goes into a cycle of sugar cravings, if that makes sense, you know?
Okay.
Yes. I think it's the
So
one. Yeah.
when we crave sugar, the sugar technically brings out a certain other hormone that gives us this feel-good feeling, right? That it releases dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter. So this is all, it's actually biology. So sometimes what we are actually feeling actually has a scientific reason to it. And so we sometimes don't realize it's happening to us, but in a very subtle way, this is what's going on, you know? So with the release of dopamine, it's actually the brain's reward system. And this kind of puts us into this reward loop, right? The brain remembers that feeling and then it kind of craves it. So every time you're feeling down, the brain sort of activates that memory cycle and says, hey, I want that good feeling again. And what it remembers is that the food that you ate, what it, you know, the food that you consumed that gave you that feeling. So this is the reason why you just keep wanting that sugar more and more each time. So that craving is sort of real. I wouldn't say that it's something that is made up or it's in your imagination. That craving is real, you know, so
and it's
gives
not
you that
something that's
feeling.
like to say, is it, do you think it's about willpower, for example, to say like to, oh, that when you succumb to a craving, to a sugar craving, like it's because you lack willpower? Or do you think it's something that goes beyond than just willpower? Well, what are your thoughts on that?
I personally feel it goes beyond than just willpower. It
Yeah.
goes beyond, especially when there are a lot of other issues going on as well. Your environment, maybe your childhood memories. If you are a kid that grew up with family members giving you a reward, let's say for example you did well in school, parents would take you for ice cream, you know, things like that. That can sort of reinforce that feeling, you know. So you're, like I said, it's very multifactorial, right? The craving is real. It's caused by the stress. That's the underlying foundation of it. But the things that then reinforce that feeling is a lot to do with that individual and their own life experiences and their habits. You know?
So from my understanding, like it sounds to me like, you know, when it comes to having these cravings and then like having emotional eating habits, it's like what you said, it's that part of dealing with the stress. So essentially it's one of the emotional eating or dealing with these cravings is part of actually trying to soothe yourself. It's a self-soothing, right? Like a
Yes,
self-soothing tool, right?
correct.
Like, right, to comfort yourself, to soothe yourself, or for some, depending on how they deal with uncomfortable emotions, right? How they deal with
Yes,
stress. You know, when you get
correct.
stressed, you feel uncomfortable, and then the craving hits, right? Because of the dopamine, because of the cortisol, you're craving for that dopamine hit. Then you eat, you succumb to the sugar, you succumb to the emotional eating, and then you feel slightly relieved, but then the shaming and the guilt comes, which causes more
Yes,
stress, then which then repeats the cycle in itself. So
correct.
it's from my understanding, it's to serve that purpose of soothing the stress and the uncomfortable emotions, right? To either reclaim your sense of control, to give yourself comfort, to soothe yourself, to maybe numb it out, right? And to
Yeah,
maybe avoid those emotions,
exactly.
right?
And
Yeah.
and the irony is, right, Diana, this craving, this neuro adaptation that occurs, it's for different people, it's different things. Like for some people, maybe it's like a gambling addiction. Or for
Yeah.
some people, it's speed. You know, they like to drive fast. They're like an adrenaline junkie. They're looking
Yeah.
for
Some is
dangerous
shopping.
activities. Yeah,
Yeah.
shopping. Yeah, exactly. For some people, it's hitting the mall and just buying something. So this
Yeah.
reward system, this feel good dopamine hit that they're craving for, different people have different ways of dealing with it, right?
Yeah.
So some is that way. But I guess where food and sugar is concerned is it's easy to get. It's in the house.
True. It's
It's not
accessible.
expensive. It's not expensive. It's not like you have to have some expensive hobby or you have to go to a bar to go purchase, you know, these alcoholic items or things like that. But that, which is why sugar and food can be something undetected or not as easily detected because
Yeah.
it's within your home, you know. And when you're eating something, nobody actually sees it as wrong, right? For example, if I were to have a whole entire bottle of wine, if I was drinking wine and you were my neighbor, right, and I'm constantly drinking and you see me every day, I mean, that's a red flag. It's so obvious. You can see me doing this that's damaging myself. Then you would probably
Yeah.
intervene, being the nice neighbor that you would be if you were my neighbor. You would help to intervene.
Right.
But where sugar and food craving is concerned and
Yeah.
emotional eating, it's a little hard to detect because you don't
Yeah.
see anything wrong with it. You're eating. Your
Yeah.
friends also see you eating. Sometimes the friends might also join you and eat the same thing. So they are also reinforcing it, kan? So
Yeah.
that's why sometimes in emotional eating and sugar craving, all the more then you need to really be clued in on it because it can
Mm-mm.
very easily just kind of slide and no one realizes it. And
Yeah.
as the years go by, your sugar eating can then cause you to gain weight, and then
Mm.
that can be open up another can of worms to putting you at risk for other lifestyle related illnesses.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to show you, when as dietitians, when we look at people who tend to consume a lot of sugar, because sugar is also calories, right? It's unnecessary calories that you add. And on top of the fact that you might be busy, you have a sedentary lifestyle, you're not very active, you're not burning off those excess calories. One of the issues of having too much of that added sugar in our diet is that they end up gaining weight over the years. I'm sure some of you here today, you might even notice that in yourself, right? Maybe what you weighed 5 years ago might not be what you're weighing now. And if that trend goes on for the years to come, before you know it, by the time you hit your 30s, your 40s, that weight gain can then put you at risk for lifestyle related illnesses.
Mm.
Type 2 diabetes, hence the reason why type 2 diabetes is on the rise. Heart disease, high blood pressure is also on the rise in corporate Malaysia.
Wow.
And then on top of that, high sugar intake also, gives us poor mood regulation. It increases our anxiety because then we have all these additional health issues and worries that we're worried about. And it also has a lot of impact on certain illnesses where hormones need to be regulated.
Yeah.
PCOS, you have a lot of these female related issues. So yeah, it's opening up a whole different can of worms. So I
Yeah.
guess that's why when we talk about health and prevention, emotional eating is one of those aspects that they need to be really clued in on as well.
Yeah. I hear you. I mean, especially when you said like, oh, there's a rise. You used a specific term called lifestyle diseases. I
Yeah.
think that what would that means? What does that mean actually? Lifestyle
But
diseases.
lifestyle diseases mean they are not caused by an infection. You're not gonna, like, for example, like if you
Ah,
have an infection that's caused by a virus, then you can pass it on to someone else. Okay.
yeah.
But a lifestyle disease, a lot of it is it's not through a virus, not through an infection, but it's through our lifestyle,
Yeah.
weight, our diet, our activity level. And the one biggest component is our hereditary component.
Mm,
So, for example, if you have a mom or a dad, close family member that has this illness, for example, has diabetes,
yeah.
you being overweight puts you at risk for getting it as well. So
Oh,
that's the reason why lifestyle diseases is something that we need to be clued in on. And for
mm,
the most part, if we start a healthy lifestyle from young, then we can actually help to prevent getting this lifestyle diseases,
I
or
hear
we can
you.
put it off to a much later age.
Understand. I mean, like,
Mm.
I thank you for the explanation, by the way. And like, I'm just thinking about when you said about like childhood experiences and the fact that it's a lifestyle disease, just shows, just opens up a whole other can of worms of like
Yeah.
how insidious sugar is, I guess, in this
Mhm.
case, how it can be added into so many things and we don't even notice, how
Mhm.
it's then used, like how it's so accessible. Okay, that's one thing. Like the financial aspect of it, that it's so cheap,
Yeah, we
or
don't think
you
about
know,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
in a deeper level, right? And also with, for example, going back to our culture, right, like using food as a source of connection. It's not just
Mm.
personal, it's not just like, oh, I'm eating for the sake of eating. I'm eating as a way to connect with people. I think commonly also, um, within, as it like growing up, like sometimes
Mm-hmm.
uh, when we're not as when we're not as how to say it, when we're not as articulate in addressing our emotions. I think that's
Yeah.
common in our Asian
Yes.
culture. Like you don't ever hear like people say, or it's very rare to hear people say like, oh yeah, when I was a child, like my parents, whenever I'm upset or my parents are upset, we talk about it. No, it's more of like,
Yes.
it's like they either cane you or they like do corporal punishment, and as a way to mend back the relationship, it's either
Yeah.
through food, right? Like, okay,
Yeah.
let's not talk about it and let's just have dinner, right? Or
Yeah.
let's
Yes.
let's go out for something, a meal, or let me give you candy.
Yeah.
I'll give you that candy or that chocolate if you listen to mama, what mama has to say, and
Yeah.
so that I mean, that really shows how, yeah, if you're in a state of dealing with sugar cravings, I myself am dealing with sugar cravings. I notice that,
Mm.
and I experience the impact of when I try to ignore those sugar cravings. I feel the physical impact of getting a headache, right? A migraine.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like, oh no, I'm trapped in this needing this sugar cycle, right? So,
Yeah.
and it really does, it feels like, yeah, like, oh, like giving candy to children is, they
Correct.
say it's like, yeah,
It's interesting that you use the word trap, Diana,
really,
because yes, it is a craving cycle if you think
yeah,
about it, right? Because, when you're feeling low, then of course you want to look for that sugar. Because remember, we talked about how dopamine gives you that feel good, right? Cortisol levels are high when you're feeling emotionally low. Then you look for that sugar to get that dopamine. Then the dopamine makes you feel better for that time being, right? But after that, it crashes. For
yeah,
every high that you have, you will have a very low point as well. So when that energy level crashes, that feeling crashes, you will end up craving for more. So
mm,
hence why in this slide of mine, you can see that cycle, and you can
mm,
see the various levels that a person can potentially be in, you know. And this cycle, can lead to a lot of things. It makes you irritable. It makes you sometimes feel foggy, like you
yeah,
can't think. Because you can't think about, you can't even be really productive because you're constantly thinking about what am I going to eat next, when is this feeling going to get over me again. So then
yeah,
it just repeats itself.
yeah,
So
I
sometimes
hear
it's very subtle. Different people deal with it differently. Some people are not very clued in. To them, it's fine. This is just like their normal diet. They think it's a
you.
normal diet to them. So for
Oh,
some people, they can see that it's getting in the way of them being more productive, but they still don't know what to do about it. You
yeah,
know, and then for some, it's a bit too late already. They've already, gained a lot of weight. They don't know. Then they're really stuck in another slump all by itself. So I guess the reason why I also wanted to come on this session today is I wanted people to know that if you are within this cycle, then you really need to deal with the emotional part of it. It's not about a diet. It's not about just seeing a dietitian and saying, okay, come just fix my diet. But we can fix the diet, but if you don't follow through, then it's not sustainable. And then you're
yeah,
just going to fall back into your bad eating habits again,
yeah. I
So
hear you.
gotta
So it's also
gotta
like
take control.
addressing it on a more long-term basis, and for it
Yes.
to be sustainable.
Yeah.
Fixing the diet is perhaps it's important, but it's probably
Yep.
that that kind of like that first part. But like, how do we
Right.
actually address that got you in the place of
Right.
like having this cycle in the first place, right?
And they need to identify the trigger for that emotion, that feeling.
Yeah.
Is it
So
because
maybe,
of stress at work, maybe
yeah,
something, or maybe a stress in
yeah,
the family, or maybe it might be a
yeah,
combination of both. But I
yeah.
think it's really important that they see it. Otherwise, that sugar craving, because it's really hard fighting against temptation. It's like trying to
True.
swim against a tide.
Yeah.
It's a little futile. But when you also address the emotional part, things become a lot easier.
Oh, interesting. So,
Yeah.
okay, since we talked about feeling trapped in this cycle, let's talk about what can we do? Like, what are some of the strategies that we can maybe
Yes,
implement, or like,
definitely.
yeah, to
Yeah,
manage the sugar cravings and emotional eating?
exactly. Because you don't need to feel trapped. Now that you're aware of it, there's no need to feel trapped anymore because there are ways, there are strategies for you to move forward. And
Yep.
in all fairness, my a lot of my clients, right, Diana, that actually get it, they actually do much better. And
Mm,
then they don't feel guilty about eating a bit of sugar here and there, because it's not about
yep.
totally giving up sugar all in
Yeah.
all, because like the World Health Organization says, you can have a little bit of sugar within a healthy diet, so you don't have to totally give up everything, but you
Yep.
just need to know limits, portions, moderation, so that you
Yep.
don't fall into that cycle of only looking for sugar to fill
Yep.
a void. Sugar
Exactly.
doesn't need to fill a void.
Yeah, and I also want to add that actually, in the topic of restriction, right? I think that's
Mm,
common also in how people try to manage sugar cravings, or like this
mm.
concepts of like, very like pop culture diets that are quite extreme sometimes. I don't know if you've heard, like, I think there was a time like where juices, like there was this juice diet where people only drank juices and things like that. It was quite like there are a lot of extreme diets, right? And restriction is one of it, right? And restriction is, from my understanding, it's actually an emotional and mental game, right? Because what happens is
Mm,
you you tell yourself, no, I can't succumb to this craving, but the craving gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and
yeah,
then you succumb to it, and then it's the intense shaming and guilt that happens after that. You're telling yourself, oh, you're useless. The negative
yeah.
thoughts comes really strongly, right? So
Like you failed, right? Like
you
you're a
fail.
failure. You
Yeah.
succumb to your temptation. That's
Yes,
bad. Yeah.
so, and sometimes it can be insidious in a way that, okay, as a way to, either because it causes more stress and then the temptation builds up again and then you go into the
Yes.
cycle, right? Or either sometimes it can be even in a way of self-punishment. Since you failed, you're worthless, you're useless, you can't do this. What's the
Yeah.
point of caring about your body? Just don't care.
Yes.
Let's succumb to it
And
and
that's the dangerous part. That's the dangerous part. Because I've seen clients of mine who are diabetics that fall in that. They just knowing they already have diabetes, all the more sugar is detrimental for them, when you have diabetes, right? Because
yeah.
then it causes your blood sugars to spike. And yeah, some of them just give up. But at the end of the day, it's the underlying emotional issue that they haven't
Address.
solved,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
you've got detrimental consequences after that but it's really
Yeah.
sad. So that's why, as a dietitian, I do work very closely with psychologists like you, because sometimes when I identify this issue in a client of mine, when they come to me for a diet issue, I
Mm,
do refer them to a psychologist, because they do also need to address the emotional eating part, because it
yeah,
wouldn't be fair to just deal with just the food alone. They kind
yeah,
of need to also understand the emotional eating. What's
true.
triggering that for them?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm glad to hear that you mentioned that, because I find that's really important to highlight that. I think dealing with
it
any sort
really
of
is.
physical health is holistic, right? It's a
Yes,
collaboration of
I
like
agree.
physical and emotional and mental, right? That it's not
I
just like, oh,
agree.
I have type 2 diabetes, I'll just deal with the physical part, but not
Yeah,
actually address like, oh, the feelings that comes with type 2
correct.
diabetes, or
I agree.
your cycle and so forth, right?
Yeah, I agree. Because sometimes as young people, if we ourselves don't heal, right, tomorrow when they become a parent and they have
Ah,
children of their own, then
yeah,
the diet that they know of also then gets passed on to the child.
that's
So,
true.
so it's a cycle. Then you just created another bigger cycle. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That
Yeah.
really resonates with me, because I think from my perspective, I've always thought of like generational trauma as to be like very emotional and um very like more towards words, more towards like actions and parenting styles. But I never
Mm-hmm.
I never really considered like what you mentioned, like even eating styles,
Mm-hmm.
dietary way of eating, right? Even your perception of food, right? Your
Yep.
relationship with food is also something that you pass on to your kids,
Yes.
right? It's
Agree.
not just
Agree.
like it's, and that can be traumatic too, right? It can
Yes.
be harmful too if you've always yeah, if you've always been exposed to with people maybe withholding food, or
Mm-hmm.
people not having, I don't know, like not really investing in their quality of food, just like, okay, we just,
Yes.
eat sugars, and instead of like focusing on making healthier meals and things like that,
Yeah.
and putting investment into it, but then putting pressure, all of that is actually a lot of elements that comes
It
to it.
is.
It's more psychological than we thought.
Yeah, correct. So that's why sometimes when we need to see that it's not just about the sugar. It's very easy to just say, oh, just kurangkan gula, But if it was that easy, then why isn't it something that people can just overcome? But if you
Yeah,
notice people that have sugar cravings and emotional eating, they might succeed in the beginning, when the emotion, when the what do you call that, when they are very motivated, at that moment they listen to a
yeah,
talk, then they're very motivated, then okay, next 1 week, okay, no sugar, no this, no that, eating, good food and everything. But then as soon as that week is over, feeling low, like, oh no, I can't do this is too hard. Then before you know it, they get back into the cycle again. Then they can't overcome it. So that's
mm,
that's what I mean today. So that's why in today's session I wanted to preempt this, because sometimes you need to know this. It's
yeah,
it's not just about the sugar like that per
yeah.
se.
Which
Mm.
then goes into, I think, is a great segue again to talk about like what are some of the strategies we can do. And I think the first
Yes.
thing that you talked about, to make sure that it is a sustainable journey for you as you
Mm-mm.
try to understand and make these lifestyle changes, is
Yeah.
in the first thing, which is, I think you mentioned about building your awareness, right? Which is to
Yes.
know what are your stress triggers, to understand that maybe you are actually in a sugar craving cycle, or that you
Yes.
are emotionally eating, right? That, do I
Mm.
notice that every time I get this message from my boss, or I get in a fight with my partner, I
Mm-hmm.
immediately search for like ice cream or cookies or cake, right? I need
Yes.
that sweet kick, right? Or after I've
Yeah.
had such a stressful day, all I'm thinking about is that good old teh tarik, or
Yes.
pavlova or something, right?
Oh, the best is sometimes I see my clients, right? They are stressed, they're irritated with the issue at work, right? Instantly they'll call up a friend and say, hey, I need to discuss something with you. We need to talk. I need some help. I need to talk. Okay, fine. Yes, they're reaching out to a friend for help to talk. But what do? They go to some cafe or some restaurant. They'll be drinking the sweetened drink. They'll be ordering the cake to share,
Yeah,
apparently. But ordered the cake, right? So
yeah,
as they are talking out the issue, they are also emotionally eating. They're
yeah,
eating that cake. They're having that sweet food. So sometimes,
yeah,
like I say, it's not so subtle. They don't
yes,
realize it.
yeah.
But
As
it is, you are, the fact that you are eating. You didn't meet at the park for a walk to discuss the issue. You actually
hot.
met at the cafe to talk. Yes, and then
Yeah,
you talk
true.
for 2 hours to make yourself feel better. But then
Yeah,
you also felt better partly because you had that sweet cake and that drink. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
I
So
know.
yeah.
Just to call myself out as you're saying that, I have actually a friend group that's called the Teh Tarik Gang, because
Oh, really?
it was actually a emotional support group for the time that we were working at that place. And we were like, you
Yeah.
know what? It's literally like what you said. I'm so stressed. I need to talk. But because we were still like fresh graduates, we can't afford to go to the cafe.
Yes.
We can only afford to go to the mama. So we're like, let's meet up at this mama, have a teh tarik. So it's like what you say,
Yeah.
um it's so embedded, I guess, in that culture, or without even
Yeah.
realizing. Like I said, I think it's really insidious, more than we thought. So, which is why part of the strategy is really about building that awareness. Like right now, like I'm now being more aware of, oh, okay, maybe we
Yeah.
trauma bonded over sugar, right?
Yes, correct. Without realizing it, right? You're talking, but you're right.
Yeah,
So having said that, now that we all know, we feel better about it. Let's look at some smart swaps. It doesn't mean you have to stop meeting up with your gang and your friends to talk. That's really good. You're reaching out to people for support to chat, right? But now let's flip it a little bit. Lah. Don't go on all one gang, then all support each other and have sweet things. Let's look at some smart swaps that you can do, right? One of them, of course, is instead of having the teh tarik, the one and then end up with 3 teh tariks, maybe consider ordering a different drink. Because at the restaurant, there are a lot of other beverages that you can order as well, right? So consider now looking at the menu properly and ordering something else. Like for example, the example here that I have is like if you tend to go for a sugary kopi ice, consider maybe having some milk in that black coffee and then adding some cinnamon. Now, cinnamon is one of those herbs that actually help to sort of quelch that sweet tooth of yours. So it kind of gives you that taste that's nice, a nice savory taste, but actually helps to reduce you wanting something overly sweet. Okay, so adding a little bit of cinnamon, so something like that, or even ordering like maybe a Chinese tea, a green tea, something else, something else that might still meet your taste buds lah. I'm just thinking off the cuff, but I think you get what I mean, right? Ordering something else. Or the other option is also meet at a restaurant that has other options. So don't only go to one place where all the drinks are sweet. Like don't go and meet in a boba cafe. You know what I mean? A boba tea, no matter how kurang manis the boba tea you make it, also the boba tea has to be sweet because nobody drinks a boba tea that's not sweet. Okay, so meet at a place where there are options. There are options. Don't set yourself up for failure, right?
That's a great tip.
Correct. So then other smart swaps you can do throughout your day. If you tend to crave like sweet pastries and all that, try to consider something else that's savory, maybe like a sandwich, that still gives you that savory taste, that nice creamy taste, but not, just the main ingredient is sugar. So consider a sandwich, maybe some popiah, something else that's a kueh that is a tea time favorite, but it's not sweet, like taufu fa, something else that's different. And the taufu fa, you can always tell them to lessen the sugar or put the sugar on the side, and then you just add a drizzle of it yourself. You don't have to put the whole giant little cup into it.
Oh my God, yeah, it's really big.
Yes, correct. Always ask for the sweetener to be put on the side so that you can add it yourself. Then if you like sweet drinks, for example, you like carbonated drinks, this is one tip that I always teach my clients. Consider using sparkling water. Okay, sparkling water gives you that refreshing carbonated taste, but without the sugar. Then what you can do is you can add a little bit of fruit juice of your own. So you're making like a sparkly water fruit juice. So that's one of those drinks that you can make to kind of to replace your sweetened soft drinks. All right. And then for desserts, like if you tend to like the ice creams, those types of chilled desserts, consider fresh fruit. You can even you can actually freeze fruit and then blend it with some yogurt to make like your own yogurt parfait, So by freezing the fruit and keeping it in your freezer, you can actually keep it for up to 6 months, 3 to 6 months. Oh, wow. So you can keep them in little cubes, cut them up into little portions. So whenever a dessert craving hits you, just blend it together with some yogurt, some Greek yogurt, nice and creamy. And then you've got yourself like a little nice bowl of like a yogurt parfait. So it's natural sweetness from the fruit, nice creaminess from the yogurt, which, may I add, also has added probiotics, which is good benefits for you as well, as opposed to just a sugary, empty calorie dessert, So there are little swaps that you can do. So from a dietary standpoint, So
that's
and
amazing.
Still get that same taste profile,
Yeah. So do you have any other like tips or suggestions as like someone who is in the process of, I guess, like from today's webinar, they realize, okay, I'm going to try to make these swaps, like simply like similarly, like what you mentioned about, about like, okay, you feel motivated in the beginning, right? But how do we actually last the long run, right?
Yeah, correct. Now, remember when it comes to things like sugar craving as well, it's also about what you eat throughout the day. Because
Mm.
one of the reasons that we tend to crave sugar as well is sometimes because we're overly hungry. So,
Right.
when we're hungry, then we also get moody. And that is also a
Mm.
stress trigger point, especially
Yep.
for people who tend to skip meals, people in workplaces that tend to work and then they work through lunch, they work through tea time. They are overly hungry. There's just too long a lag time from their
Yeah.
last meal. And when you're hungry, you're moody, and then on top of that, you've got work deadlines, you've got, a presentation that you're preparing for, and your boss is just breathing down your neck. If you don't
Yeah.
actually take a break to eat, that stress is just going to add up. And we know
Mm.
already, when your body is in a state of stress, what happens? Body naturally releases cortisol. And
Yep.
then that puts you into that cycle. So from a
Mm.
dietary standpoint, as your dietitian advising you for today, don't fall into the hungry trap. Or some people
Mm.
use the word hangry, from hungry, then they become angry, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't fall into that trap. We are human, right? So when we work also, you do need to give yourself time to have breaks.
Yep.
And same with meals. Don't torture yourself and go for too long without having a meal. I would recommend every 3 to 4 hours, take a break, have a
Mm.
bit of a meal, have a healthy snack so that you
Mm.
keep your blood sugar levels stable, so that you don't fall
Mm.
into that hungry trap. I'm feeling hungry and stressed trap.
I hear you.
So time your meals, time your meals. And if
It's
you know you're going to be having a busy day and you're moving around a lot, keep a snack, pack a snack with you, pack a sandwich in your tote bag, put it into your computer bag, go for your meetings off-site, you're moving around so that you don't have to feel like, oh no, there's no restaurant, I don't know what to eat. It's a lot of pre-planning. You sort of know what your day ahead is going to be like and pre-plan for that. And then
true.
I have a tip here for you in terms of how you want to proportion your plate. So when you're fixing yourself a meal, make sure that it has a lot of vegetables in it. So half of your plate is vegetable slash or fruit. But reason being they're high in fiber and they're low in calories, so they will fill you up. And then a
Mhm.
quarter of your plate is your protein, your
Mm.
fish, your eggs, your meat, and then the other quarter is your carbohydrates. So you've got all the three elements of a healthy diet in there, and then you can make all kinds of combinations out of it. You can have it in the form of noodles with lots of vegetables with some protein. You can have it in the form of a sandwich. The bread of your sandwich is your carbo, then your filling will be your vegetables and your protein. Or you can have it as a nasi campur, like a mixed
Mm.
rice. So you can, proportion your plate as such. All right.
Mm.
So the other thing, of course, is if for those of you who like cooking, maybe get back into looking at preparing yourself a meal as a form of self-care.
Mm.
Care for yourself. Don't say, Alama, I used to love cooking, but now I'm too busy. One of the reasons why I like to encourage people to cook, especially those who like cooking, is because when you cook that meal, it's like you are reinforcing to yourself that I am important, I'm caring for myself. So I'm going to make
Mm.
myself a meal. I'm going to make
Wow.
myself a sandwich, I'm going to make myself a small breakfast, something easy. Cooking doesn't need to be something huge and culinary. You don't have to cook the four lao and the rice and all that. And you don't
Mm-mm.
have to cook for anyone else, but at least take care of yourself. Make yourself a simple meal, a simple snack. That's a good start.
Wow.
Especially when you're also dealing with emotions. Self-care is really important, and
Yeah.
cooking is a form of self-care. It doesn't just have to be facials or massages. It can be
Yeah.
something as simple as making a nice nourishing meal for yourself.
True.
And then the last thing is also make sure you stay hydrated, because a lot of times when you are thirsty and dehydrated, that can also feel like you're hungry, but actually you're not hungry, you're actually just dehydrated. So
Oh,
these are some
interesting.
tips. Yeah.
I had
And then
no
make sure that,
idea.
yeah, so especially in an office setting, right? Because you're under air conditions, sometimes you're not sweating, so you don't feel like you're thirsty.
Dehydrated.
So
Ah.
that's why it's really important to keep a bottle next to you on your desk. Make sure you drink regularly, and make sure you finish up that bottle and fill it
Yeah,
up
true.
again. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's really great. And thank you so much for sharing. I feel like I've learned so much, and it's really great to know that, yeah, that these are, I feel like, things that you can implement immediately. And if you don't mind, I wanted to share a little bit about
Yeah.
um, the psychological aspect, the emotional
Yeah.
part of how to handle, to sort of to set yourself up for success for the long run, right? So it is definitely in the first part, which is building your awareness of like your own stress triggers. How does stress show up in you? Like, what do you
Mm-hmm.
do, what do you
Yeah.
feel, what do you think, right? And then knowing like what triggers you, and then seeing that, just noticing like what happens when you feel stressed. Like, do you immediately have the craving, and do you actually go and seek out for sugary foods, for example, right?
Yeah.
So awareness is actually one of the biggest parts. So if you're able to capture this, and if you're able to pin this down, and if it's truly part of the emotional work, then is to do uh, to practice emotional regulation. So
Yes.
that is not just relying on sugary foods, right? It's finding behaviors or strategies that actually help uh, to soothe in a different way, right? To provide soothing that doesn't have the cost that sugar provides for you, right? That, oh, if I take sugar, these are the costs, these are the health costs that I take.
Yeah.
What are some replacement habits or behaviors that I can do? Maybe perhaps, like I said, staying, naming your emotions. I feel stressed,
Yeah.
I feel angry, right? Am I
Agreed.
actually hungry, or am I actually feeling something else? Am I actually anxious, or am I actually am I actually angry or upset or sad, or am I bored, for example,
Yeah.
and I'm seeking for the sense of food, right? So
Yeah.
part of it is that, and then naming those emotions and building your tolerance to sit with it, right? Like, what happens if I
Yes.
sit with it? How long can I sit with this emotion? Is it okay for me to sit with this emotion just for a bit? And slowly building that tolerance. So it's not about distracting yourself or trying to push that emotion away. It's more of like,
Yeah.
these emotions can be here, and it's okay for me to feel like this, right? How can I soothe
Own
my,
it. Own it.
yeah,
Yeah.
allow
Agreed.
yourself to accept and own it, right? To
Yeah.
embrace that emotion, right? And that it's okay for me to feel this way, right? And then yeah, and then having, like what you mentioned, like
Mm.
apa sorry owning the emotion, and then sitting
Yes.
with it, and then helping yourself to go through it, right? So having
Yeah.
more healthier behaviors, like going for a walk, or journaling out your thoughts, or talking to someone, maybe over a drink, but maybe more a healthier option, for example, right?
Yeah.
um, or maybe going for
Yeah.
therapy, right? That can be
Yes.
an option too, right? To understand, oh, how far does this go back in my childhood, if
Yeah.
there is some childhood experiences, right? So yeah, it's that. And I would say a great tool that you can immediately implement is just pausing, right? So when you immediately you're seeking out for those chip more like cookies, right? You're like, pause, just pause first, and just tune
Yeah.
in and ask yourself, am I hungry, or what am I actually feeling, right? Can I name
Yeah.
the emotion right now? What is it? And it can be, it can be quite challenging. So I
Yeah.
would encourage it as a practice to keep on trying it out,
Agreed.
and to keep on practicing it, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's from,
Oh
like, I
yeah.
guess, go ahead. You wanted to say
I
something?
totally agree, because those are some of the tools that is really needed for them to identify that. Yeah, it's not the swaps, the dealing with the foods. Yes, that is definitely a strategy. But unless they also deal with the emotional part of it, right? It
Yeah.
can it can be not the diet part can be a little harder to sustain, you
Mm-mm.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why, and sometimes I know talking with friends and talking to certain people helps some people, but sometimes they talk in circles as well, and they're not quite addressing the actual issue. So,
Yeah.
which is why when I see this in my clients, I highly encourage them to actually talk to a proper psychologist so that they learn the proper tools to
Yeah.
deal with that emotion.
Yeah,
you know.
definitely.
And
Yeah,
there's no stigma and there's no shame to it. It's just sometimes when you talk to a proper professional, they actually help you to identify certain root causes and then
yeah,
give you the proper tools to deal with it. and
yeah,
and then after that, in moving forward, you will soon realize even your choices in foods, you valuing yourself better, you viewing your health better, it just everything improves, you know,
yeah,
because then, yeah,
yeah.
so then it's the sugar craving also tends to get displaced. The sugar
Mhm.
doesn't become the go-to thing for to soothe you, you know.
Yeah. So it is
Mm.
possible to break out of that sugary cycle, right?
It is extremely possible. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in this session. You know what I mean? The
Yeah,
reason why I wanted to be here is I want to tell people, if you feel that, you are always reaching for sugar to
yeah,
mask this, it is possible to break. So that
yeah,
you then, after that, can also have a better relationship with sugar. You're
yeah,
not looking at sugar as an enemy, you know?
yeah,
You're looking at those
exactly.
sugary foods as part of your healthy diet. They don't
Yeah,
need to be totally out of your diet. You don't have to fear that you have to give up all these sugary foods and go sugarless. Nobody lives like
mm-mm.
that. Certain foods are part of our diet. We do
Yeah,
enjoy a certain dessert here and there. We do enjoy a little bit of sugar to flavor up certain foods of ours, but it does not need to be the enemy that we fear and then causes us so much pain and stress.
yeah. I hear you.
Mm.
Okay. Thank you so much for all the insights and the learning and the tips, and I hope everyone has benefited.
Yep.
I am just aware of the time, and we want to make sure that we have ample of time to answer all the questions that we've received.
Yes.
And thank you for all the questions. I'm really excited to get to it. But before we get to that, yeah, maybe just a quick key takeaway from today that yeah,
Mm.
all sugar cravings, like you said, it's very
Yes.
possible to break out of it, which is I'm very happy to hear that. So if you feel trapped, you're not alone, and
Yes.
it's very
You're
possible to
not
break out
alone.
of it. Yeah,
You are
yeah,
totally not alone. Totally not alone. And there's a biological reason to it. So
yeah,
it is not, you're not abnormal. So don't feel bad. Don't feel yourself being a failure. Please
yeah.
don't. Please
Okay,
don't.
I'm glad
You
to
know?
hear that.
Please
Yeah.
don't.
Okay. And with the other key takeaways is to make, again, to start small rather than going
Mm-hmm.
big and then burning
Yes.
out. Starting small to ensure that it remains sustainable in the
Yes.
long run, right? It's a
Agreed.
lifestyle change rather than like a quick fix, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and then to nourish your body regularly with balanced meals, and again to build
Mm.
your awareness emotionally, internally, externally as well. Again, to just
Yes.
keep yourself up for success. So
Yes.
we hope that that has been helpful. And if you do need support, we have actually some support lined in for you if you want to reach out for more,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, to just get more information about diet or to work on your nutrition or even to just get support for your mental health. We do have
Mm-hmm.
a 24-hour free Naluri text line that you can
Mm.
see the numbers here for each of the country. So it's free, so you can chat with them whenever you need urgent support, and it's
Mm-hmm.
private and
Excellent.
confidential. Yeah, and it's meant by professional counselors, so they are well trained and professional in handling your crisis that you need support for. So please save these numbers so that you have it at hand and you can share it with people who might need it lah. Okay.
Excellent.
And then
Excellent.
we also have, if you want further consultation, again, with myself or with other mental health coaches, or even with our Naluri dietitians, with our
Mm-hmm.
Naluri fitness coaches and the team that we have, we do
Mm-hmm.
provide one-to-one consultations that's more directive, that's more personal towards you. Right? If you want to embark on your journey of maybe working on being healthier or eating healthier or addressing some of the emotional blocks that you might face
Yep.
when it comes to trying to make sustainable changes with your diet, for example, or with your eating habits. So, yes, you
Mm-hmm.
can scan the QR to book a session for one to one support as well. And we also have a free emotional well being assessment. If you just want to check in on how you're doing, again, like, it's a great way to get started. Like, how is my emotional well being? Trying to understand, like, am I in an emotional eating cycle or a sugar craving cycle? This is
Yes.
a great way to start. You can check out your emotional well-being again through this assessment. You can scan the QR code, and to just understand, it's 3 minutes, it's free, and it's also private and confidential and anonymous. Okay. And then we also have the Naluri app. So you can download to
Mm.
chat with all the coaches that are available. Again, it's a whole team of real people and real coaches, real professionals, which is really cool. So you can ask any sort of questions that maybe we didn't get to address today. You can ask them as well. They are, again, equipped to answer you and give you the support that you are looking for to, again, to work on whatever goals that you want to achieve.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can scan it over here if you're interested. And yeah, if you want to stay connected with Naluri, here are our socials. That's Facebook and Instagram as well that you can connect with. Otherwise, that's the part. Let's get into the Q&A.
Sure.
Before that, I just want to also say the slides are actually up now. You can download them. And then after the Q&A, please stay tuned because we do want you guys, we want your feedback about how the webinar has been. So yes, let's answer some questions. Maybe I can read them out to you if that's
Okay.
okay. So diabetes can be inherited. Can controlling or avoid sugar intake prevent diabetes? What is your point on
Uh, well, diabetes is a hereditary condition and it's an autoimmune condition. So,
that?
yes, I mean, sugar, a lot of it has to do with your carbohydrate intake, your total food intake for the day, your weight. Diabetes risk is increased if you are overweight. So, that's also something to look at. So it's not only about totally avoiding all sugar, because you could be a person who doesn't take much sugar at all, or you could even be vegetarian, you maybe don't even take meat at all. But if your total amount of calories is more than what you consume, what you need for the day, and that causes you to gain weight, and then that can put you at risk for diabetes. So yeah, it's not only about totally avoiding sugar. That is honestly just a misconception.
Okay. All right. Thank you
Mm.
for helping to answer that. I hope that helps. That answers your question. Again, thank you for the question. I'm looking through the questions. There are quite a
Okay.
number of them. But I think I want to summarize the questions because I think a lot of the question is about, it's about, um, it's about sugar, right? They want to know,
Yes.
like, is carbohydrate also a sugar? Do we need to control the intake of body sugar? We eat rice 3 times a day. Are we allowed to drink sweet tea or sweet coffee? Like, and then
Yeah.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
so
I understand the question. See, the
yeah.
thing about carbohydrates is they all get broken down to become glucose, right?
Mm,
So they all end up becoming the unit known as glucose, which is the refined sugar. So you tend to get sugars in from your carbohydrate foods, from your fruits. Fruits also naturally have sugar. You get some sugar as well from milk in the form of lactose. All right.
mm,
The added sugar we spoke about is sugar that's added to foods that are not already sweet. But certain foods like your carbo foods, your grain foods, your fruits, milk, they naturally will have sugar in its form. But how you
mm,
consume the sugar is different. When you eat fruit in its whole form, for example, you eat a whole apple, right? The
mm,
apple also has fibers in it. So the way your body breaks it down and utilizes the sugar is in a more stable, controlled manner, as opposed
mm,
to you going for something that is refinedly sugary sweet. Because in its high concentration of refined sugar, your body naturally quickly absorbs that sugar content, and that causes your blood sugar level to spike up very fast. And
yep,
then, moreover, some of the sugary foods, like the ones that you find in desserts, like cakes and ice creams, they're also empty calories because they don't have a lot of important nutrients in them, right? They're
mm,
just predominantly fat and sugar. So, but they don't give you much protein, they don't give you much vitamins. So they become empty calories. That's what they call empty calories. So at the end of the day, it's about your overall amount of carbohydrates and added sugars that you eat. So yes, there are some people when they have emotional eating, they don't necessarily go for the sweet foods, but they tend to go for a lot of the high carbo, high fat foods, like a char kway teow, like a nasi goreng, the nasi biryani, they tend to go for those. So when you eat them excessively as well, then those also then end up becoming a form of carbohydrate and a form of sugar. So those are also things to be aware of.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you for answering. I hope also to everyone that answers your question. I think because a lot of questions is knowing like is it okay? Like they want to know about different types of sugar. So
Yes,
carbo,
agreed. Because
glucose,
it can be very
stevia,
confusing. Because some people,
yeah,
it can be very
fruits
confusing, and
itself.
that
Yeah,
can be that we can deep dive into that. But I
yeah,
think the most important thing is identifying the fact that when you have an emotionally stressed moment, and the fact that you are craving these high fat, high carbo, sweetened kind of foods, then that's already your red flag to think about.
yeah.
Remember,
Okay.
all sugars that you consume, your body will still break it down to that one single unit. You know what I mean? So trying
Yeah.
to get technical and say, oh, but I only eat this, I don't eat that type of sugar and this and that, it's futile. You're trying to
Mhm.
justify, trying to mask the deeper issue.
Right. That is like
Mm.
more long term than that, lah. That's deeper than that.
Yes, agree.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the part that you should actually be focusing more on. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry, everyone. We I think that's probably the last question that we get to answer for today.
Okay.
Unfortunately, but thank you everyone for all your amazing questions. We don't want to leave you hanging, so I just want to encourage you guys again to take these questions and ask and go to the Naluri coach and actually talk to the Naluri coach, your dietitians. If you have dietitian questions, please ask the dietitian. And if you have mental health questions, please ask the mental health coach. So we want to say again, thank you so much for your amazing participation, for being here today, such amazing energy and presence.
Yep.
Again, thank you to you as well for such an amazing and insightful sharing. And
You're
we hope,
welcome.
yeah, and we hope that it has been wonderful. And again, please feel free to give some feedback. We really appreciate to know what worked today, what you liked, and what we can
Yeah.
continue, and maybe what we can improve on. And if you want to download the slides, you can also download those slides. But yes, other than that, thank you so much, and we
Thank you
wish you
so
a
much,
great
everyone.
day. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you so much. Thanks for having me, everyone.
Thank you.